Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome everyone to IE 206 Engineering Economy, and this is today's, inshallah, we are going to cover chapter 14 and 16 together, since they are in the similar concept and relatively short, so we don't need to spend that much on those two chapters. And we will see how it's going to be with the flow, and if it needs another lecture, then we can complete it in Wednesday, inshallah. We will start with chapter 14, which is the effects of inflation. Before we proceed with the inflation definition and methods, what you think is inflation mean, and if you can bring an example from real life, even if you just look to the word definition, that will help you to know the meaning of the inflation. If you want to participate, you can use the chat box, or you can have the mic if you would like. Okay, yes, Umar is تضخم اقتصادي, which means if you can bring me an example about inflation in real life, how it is affecting us and how it could affect you as a consumer or as a buyer. تفضل صالح. Yes.
السلام عليكم. أتوقع زي الدحين اللي بيصير مقاطعة المنتجات الفرنسية والتركية والكلام ده، فأتوقع إنه يسبب التضخم المالي، ولا التضخم يكون فقط زيادة ما يكون نقصان.
Okay. That is something different, the one you mentioned about that example. If it could be one of the consequence it happened to the country, but it doesn't mean that whenever a method happens like that, the results will be the same, because it depends if that products can be sold to another country, so the country will not fall down in terms of the economy. It could be affect the country, but in a short term, not really in a long term. But the examples here from Abdullah Bluey, yes, this is a very good example. What happened in Venezuela. Also, Umar. Umar, this is about the interest. تفضل عبد الرحمن, you are raising your hand. Yes.
Doctor, the consequences of the inflation. So imagine if you have 100,000 real, so you cannot keep it in cash in the bank because of the inflation. Even if it was regular, you need to change that value to another value that cannot be inflated so much. And one of the example of my friends, the Venezuela, this is the extremist example. So this is when the cash doesn't have any value.
A part of what you said, Abdurrahman, is correct, but there is some information you brought need to be maybe clarified. It's not you cannot take it to the bank, the money. You can store it in the bank. But what you said about the value of the money that dramatically change, yes, I agree with that. There is Umar, I believe, yes. Okay, we have to distinguish between the difference between the interest rate that we have covered earlier from chapter 2 and the inflation. They are similar in terms of the mathematical concept, in terms of their percentage, and they apply to the original amount. Interest rate, it is calculated, it is predicted, it is forecasted. Inflation usually happen for a sudden, for major event happen that is collapse the economy in the country. So what happened there, it is usually even more in terms of the effect to the value of money than the interest rate, because interest rate, it takes time until it shows the effect. Inflation, it is immediately whenever it happens. So all what you have seen, يعني عمر خان, زياد الجهني, Ahmed Sheikh, Umar again, Ahmed Hazmi, Abdurrahman, all who participated, يعني those are really good examples of explanation about the inflation. However, now we can proceed with the definition, but before we that, let's conclude. It is the value of money, or the power of purchasing, is it loses the power of the purchasing. For example, you have the 100 real, it worth nothing. In the interest rate, you can see the value of money change, but it is small compared to the inflation. And as you can see, we used to compare 20 years ago to now, and the amount of the change is not radical. It is changed, but is not radical. But the inflation, when it happens, that's mean the currency even itself, nothing. Even in Iran, what's happening now, their currency is dramatically being inflated. So if you compare it to another currency, like stable currency like dollar, that's what usually countries do. You can see how it is being falling apart in these days. Okay, so this is the definition. Increase amount of money needed. So pay attention to the word. I have to use the pointer. Um, I don't know if the pointer is working or no here. Oh, okay, now I believe it's working. So pay attention to this word, needed. So it's not the increase of amount, no, it's the increase amount needed. That's you need it to purchase the same amount of products or service. The same amount of products or service. A decrease in purchasing power. This is a very simple definition, and you can easily recall it. Decrease in purchasing power. 1 unit of money buy less product or service. We have two elements in the inflation concept that we need to know, or two terminologies. Terminology مصطلحات. Constant value dollars, CV, not your resume, the CV curriculum. No, this is constant value dollars, okay? Which mean the same purchasing power, that the purchasing power is not changed with the time. The future dollars is the amount of money in the future with the effect of the inflation. So the constant, and easily to link it, when it says CV, and it stands for constant, so that's mean constant is not changed. When it says future, that's mean when inflation happened, that's mean the future will be affected by the amount of inflation. Yes, Salih.
يعني دكتور لما الدولة يصير لها تضخم يعني هذا الشيء كويس ولا سيء؟
No, when it happens, that's mean it's very bad. That's mean when it, you go the definition, decrease in purchasing power. What is? I remember, and this is not really too far. I lived in that time when I used to go to Turkey, and we used to do grocery بقالة supermarket. Okay, we end up with paying million of liras, okay? Not because we are spending too much. This is regular grocery, like any family do it here with maybe 500 to 1,000 riyal of monthly grocery, okay? For a big family, this is an average from to 300 to 800 or 1,000. This is worth of millions. That time I remember the 100 worth of 1 million liras. That is inflation. When something happened like that, that's mean the value of your money, it's worth nothing. So imagine if you are spending 100 riyal here, and you are getting by 100 that time, يعني let's say يعني small grocery maybe for the 3 or 4 days يعني of supplies, and you are spending there 1 million to get the same. So what you think, is it good or bad? You tell me.
باد صح.
Yes. Moving on with the formulas now. Now we learned about the CV, which is constant value, and future dollars. The formula is very simple, and whether you memorize it or no, but it is very simple. It is the constant value. It is equal the future, which is the one affected by the inflation, divided by 1 plus f, which is the inflation rate to the power n. If it is the inflation rate, as we use I for interest rate, we use F for inflation rate, and both of them are percentage, so you are going to use the same tables that for the A given P and P given A we used to deal with, which is the compound interest rates. So it is a rate, and N we يعني get used to it that N is the number of periods or number of years. Future dollars equal the constant, which is the CV, times 1 plus f to the power n. So basically this is the formula, the first line, and then this is a derivative from that one. Going to the chat box here, we have a question, Abdul Karim, how hard is to fix the inflation? Okay, yeah, this has happened, as I said, in Turkey. Maybe we can say 18 to 20 years ago, I believe that was the time. It needs a lot to fix an economy when it collapses like that. You need to do a major work to improve the economy. Turkey's been through that in that time, in that era, and they have improved their economy over the decades after like 20 years ago until now. If we are considering these maybe the last 3 years, I'm just giving an example. There is nothing that related to the country, but I'm just giving a real example. What happened to Venezuela is the same. يعني. Now, to fix Venezuela's economy, it needs a major change because inflation is not just related to the value of money and purchase power. That's mean uh, we can say that the country comes in a time that كساد, you know, الكساد الاقتصادي. So this is what happens, and that's mean you have jobless people. You have the threat and the crime numbers start to increase. Why? Because people, they have nothing to lose. So when that happens, values and morals يعني they are tested that time. Who can be holding himself, or people start to يعني lose that values when this has happened to the يعني it is very bad يعني to fix a situation, but also is not easy to fix it. It depends also on the country's resources. If that country has natural resources, gold, diamonds, oil, gas, it may help them to survive earlier. If it is also based on manufacturing, so they can stand up early, like Japan, what happened after World War II. They could have bring their economy back again. So it depends really on the country's situation. Okay, an example of how to implement the constant value dollars. Here's an example, says how much would be required today. Okay, required today. And now if we stop here reading, the first thing comes to your mind, that's mean is the present required. But hold on until we continue and complete the example. to purchase an item that increased in cost by exactly the inflation rate. The cost 30 years ago was 1,000, and inflation has constantly averaged 4% per year. Okay, so he gave you the value 30 years ago, and he wants the value now. So what is the required in terms of the variables? Is it present or annual or future? Future, أحسنت يا أحمد, excellent. So the future is the one needed because it is comparing to 30 years ago. To find the future value, we had the formula from the previous slides. And it says the constant value dollars, which is found in the example, multiplied with 1 plus f to the power n. So the constant value, which was the 1000, multiplied with 1 plus the rate. And pay attention, you are using the rate, you're not using the percentage. The percentage, when you use the tables, yeah, you go and use the percentage. So 1 plus 0.04 to the power number of years, which is 30 years, and that is going to be the future dollars. That means the required today, considering the inflation. This calculation is not considering the time value of money. It is only considering the inflation. And in engineering economy and even in real life, this is not the fact in reality. The reality, two things affect the value of money. When it happens like an inflation, this is not neglecting the interest rate or the value of money. So as you can see in this statement here, a proper engineering economy analysis should consider both inflation and time value of money. Inflation and time value of money. Okay. Abdul Karim, Abdullah, no, here we're not using this for the tables. The formula is to multiply 1 plus the inflation rate to the power n. We are not using the tables here. Now, in the next slide, we will use the tables because in that time, the interest rate and the inflation will be needed. So we are going to use the tables. Okay, so hold on until we see that we call this case when both applied. We call this, and the result, it shows what is the future value. Now, how is that case in reality? Depend on the situation of the country, because the inflation, it could be, as here in the example, 4%, or it could be 8, or it could be 10. All these inflation rates are going to affect the consumer or the buyer, even the sellers, depending on the situation when it happens, how long is going to be lasting, how big is the inflation rate happened also. So going back to the actual of okay, yes. Yeah, but there is no need to go for tables here. You can just multiply them directly. Okay. Because the tables, you're going to use them. I'm not saying you are not. But here is where the need of the tables. We consider the interest rate and the inflation. At the same time, we call that adjusted for inflation. If you recall chapter 5, which is the present worth, and chapter 6, the annual worth, all those applications, all those methods can be implemented when inflation happens by using adjusted interest rate for inflation. or adjusted present worth for inflation, or adjusted annual worth for inflation. In this level, for this time, we are going to only cover the present worth. We are going to cover the annual, and we're not going to solve alternatives. We are going to see only how the present worth calculated when interest rate and inflation affect the value of money. Two ways to solve these problems. Two ways, both of them will lead you to the same answer. It is going to be depend on you, your preference. The first way, you have to find the inflation, to find the CV, which is the constant value, as we did in the previous slide, using the inflation rate, which is F. And then you find the present worth using the real rate, which is the interest rate. So two steps in the first method. The first method, you have to do two steps. First, you do CV, which we just did in the previous example, and then you use present worth from the table, but you don't use the F, you do use the I, because two things are affecting now, inflation rate and the interest rate. In the first step, you find the CV using the inflation rate. The second step, you use the present worth using the interest rate. The second method, you change the interest to interest inflation, or adjusted interest rate adjusted for inflation, and calculate the IF. The IF is the interest rate adjusted for inflation. IF equal the interest rate plus F plus I times F. When you find IF, you immediately go and use it for the present worth. There is no CV or future values needed at that time. We will see an example solved by the two methods or two ways to see the difference between the application, and then it is going to depend on you what is your preference. If you please just give me until we finish the example, and then I will take all the questions, because this is only the example needed for this chapter. A machine will have a cost for 25K. It's a future cost 6 years from now. Now the question is asking, find the present worth. It is saying that, and this is what is going to happen. You have questions for the inflation. But how you distinguish the inflation from chapter 5, you will see if the real interest 10% and the inflation. So inflation will be giving to you. In chapter 5, we didn't deal with inflation. So interest rate was 10 and the inflation was 5. Using CV, which is the constant value way, or using the adjusted interest rate. Both of them are going to lead to the same answer. So if we start with the first one, the CV, to find the CV, you have to follow the formula, which is the future value or future dollar divided by plus F. So the future, we have it here, the 25K divided by 1 plus the inflation rate, which is the 5%, which is the rate 0.05 to the power 6, because it's the number of years. After you find this EV, then you find the present worth from the CV value. So you use the CV value and you find P given F. Now you use the interest rate for 6 years. This is the first method. The second method, for those people who doesn't want to go with multiple steps, you convert the interest one time, which found to be the IF 0.1. ما في صوت. Yes, check the voice, please. There is voice or there is no?
في صوت
Okay. طيب. So the second method is you find the interest adjusted. So the interest adjusted, which is 0.1, which is the I, plus F, plus I times F. Now this is 15.5. Then you use it immediately to find the present given future for the original constant value that is given, or not the constant value, sorry, the future value, because we are finding P given F. Now 15.5, I know that maybe you don't find it in the table, but we have learned that how we can use interpolation to find it. So now it is really depending on you. If you want to go and find the value of money or the value of that bracket using the interpolation, or if it is exists on the table list, then this maybe I feel it is shorter or easier. If the percentage given and you don't want to go with the interpolation route, then you can go with the first method, because it is dealing with the integer interests and integer inflation. Usually the inflation and interest rate are given as an integer, and you can find those values easily from the tables, but you have to do it in two steps. First, you have to find the constant value, then you can find the present worth from the constant value. But here, when the interest rate calculated using the adjusted interest inflation, then you can use it directly from the future value, the constant value. It doesn't need to be calculated. So now we take questions if you have, before we proceed with the second example. Yes, Saleh.
دكتور يعني الطريقتين كلهم نفس الناتج، الهدف ان انا اطلع البريزنت وورث.
Yes, both of them, as you can see, the results are the same.
اوكي، والفرق انه فقط على حسب السؤال ايش حدد لي اي طريقه استعمل فقط، يعني هنا يوز اي اف بس.
Yes. In exams, I don't limit you with one. I leave it to you. You solve it in the method, in the way you would like. But as I told you, sometimes you will finding this percentage, it is going to take another 2 steps to find the interpolation until you find the result and then find the present worth. So some go with that easier for the first one. But for example, if I brought you a percentages, that is the inflation if it is integer, so this step or this method is going to be easier. But I don't limit, I don't ask you. Usually I ask you to find the present worth, and it is up to you. The method, both of them you can use. Okay. Muhammad Abdel Ghani, future give you the CV. I'm not understanding really your question. If you take the mic and ask your question. Okay. The CV gives you the future value. The CV, its method is here. It doesn't, both of them, they have a relation, which is the 1 plus F, which is the inflation rate, to the power n. You can find each one from the other. Whatever is known, you can find the one is unknown. The relation is here. We show it in this slide. You can find either the future from the constant or the constant from the future, considering the converter 1 times 5 to power n. Okay. Fine. To the second example and the last example for inflation, as I told you, this chapter is relatively short, and when you go and read it in the textbook and read the extra slides I have, you may find and see that other application of inflation, like in annual worth, inflation adjusted, and so on. This is, I advise you for your own reading to learn, but selecting the present is one of the examples for the adjusted inflation rate, and that could be enough. Sometimes I cover only the annual worth adjusted and I don't cover the present. So in this video or this recorded, I will use the present adjusted, and we are not going to cover the remaining. So the other example, alternatives can be taken in one of 3 ways. Which is better financially, using the present worth if the inflation rate is 4% and the interest rate is 6%. The first alternative, 100,000 to be used immediately or paid immediately. The second alternative is 8 payments of 15,000 each year starting next year. That's mean from year 1. And the alternative 3 payments of 45,000 each year for those years 0, 1, 0, 4, and 8. So either you pay it all in cash or at year 0, which is alternative 1. Alternative 2, you have equal amount for 8 years with the 15,000. The third one, which is three equal payments on year 0, 4, and 8. Which one is more economical or financial? The inflation is given and the interest is given. To find the IF, and here is chosen to be using the IF, you can do the other method if you want. The IF is 0.06 plus 0.05, which is I plus F plus I times F, which is at the end, which is equal 10.24%. The first alternative, no converting needed because it is going to be now immediately. So this is at time 0. For alternative 2, I have 8 equal payments, which is $15 starting from next year. To convert 8 equal payment starting from the next year to year 0 as a present, what converter we are going to use? P given A or P given F? We are going to use present given an annual because we have 8 equal payment every year, 15,000. To find it for the present, that's a P given A. That's alternative 2, which is 15,000 P given A using the I adjusted for inflation 10.24 for 8 years because it says 8 payments. Alternative 3, it is 3 payments, one placed on year 0, one placed on year 4, and the last one placed on year 8. To find those payments at the present, how I'm going to use the formulation to convert them to present? P given A or P given F? P given F, yes. Why? Because they are in a separate time frames. In plan 2, you have the 15,000 each year for 8 years. So equal amount, that is an annual. But I have equal amount here, 45,000, but they are in a different time or number of years. One placed now, the other placed one in year 4 and the other on year 8. So the one on year 0, I don't need to convert it. It is already present. Only I have to convert the one from 4 and 8. From 4, I use P given F, IF for number of years 4. The other one, I use P given F for 10.24, which is the IF, for the number of years 8. And when you find the present worth for all the 3 alternatives, then you can compare which one is more economical and select it. Since the example it was not completed as the given information, whether it's a payment going to you pay it or it's a payment that is going you earn it. So in this case, seems to be that it is like a investment. So the present worth in this case will be the one, the higher is the winner because is going to be not a cost, it is going to be return value. But if it was going to be cost and you are going to pay it, then you are going to select the one has the lower value or the lower numerical value. Okay, but this is just to show you how to convert the present using, or to convert to present using the interest in adjusted for inflation. But in real examples or examples, it will be clearly whether it is investment or it is going to be a cost. Any questions so far? The percentage using the tables, we have covered that in chapter 2. We said that you use the interpolation. Go back to chapter 2 and then you will find the interpolation for converting those methods. Now let's move on to chapter 16. Chapter 16, it is also short chapter and is even shorter than the inflation, which is 14. And the reason we have both of them recorded in the same session because they are related to each other, similar to 5 and 6, but those were lengthy chapters compared to those 14 and 16. Depreciation. The depreciation, the concept of the inflation comes in the value of money. The depreciation comes in the value of the asset, not the value of the money. See the difference, okay? When you purchase a car, the first day you get your car, there is a depreciation for that car in terms of the value of that asset. If you got it from the automotive dealer or the car dealer, and you decided the next day you are going to sell it, you will lose a minimum, maybe a couple of percentage of the original amount you just paid, and you just got it one day back. صح? This is common, and the reason is the depreciation. So here we are talking about the asset. We are not talking about in terms of the value of the money. The definition of the depreciation is, or the concept of the depreciation, to present the decrease in value of a tangible asset. Tangible asset أشياء عينية أو مادية over time. Okay, the decrease, انخفاض قيمتها over the time. We all know that any assets or any items has a depreciation. How it is calculated, we will learn about some methods. We cannot say all the depreciation, as we didn't say we covered all the inflation. Those big methods, and to cover them it needs weeks, and we are here trying to focus on the concept and to master the essential of that concept. Those terminologies are the key to solve the depreciation method for this chapter. You need to recall them and understand them because you are going to use the formula to just plug those values and get the results. طيب, the first one, I think all we know it, which is the P, or the first cost. And I think everyone know that is the installed cost or the initial cost of the asset. The book value, this is something new. As we said, the cash value, which is the CV in the inflation, we have the BV, which is the book value for time, which is, as you can see, B, and then there is a T. So you can find the book value at a certain number of years. Have you heard about the book value? Anyone heard about book value before can participate here to explain it? Okay, so we will explain it here. The book value is the remaining of the amount of the initial investment at a certain number of years. The remaining amount from the initial investment or the capital investment in certain number of years. Take an example. Ahmed Sheikh, for example, he has, let's say, Toyota Camry, and Hazim has Hyundai Sonata. Okay, both of them, they purchased those cars at the same time and the same model of year, 2020, let's say. 2021, the book value of Ahmed's car different than the book value of Hazim's car, and that related to many factors. One of them is the original investment, which is the amount you paid at the beginning, the car manufacturer, the reliability, the features, the mileage, accident happen or no. So all these on year one, we call the value that Ahmed's car can be sold with is the book value on year one, and which is going to be different than Ahmed's car, definitely, because it's a different brand, different name, even if they got the same one, the same Toyota Camry, both of them. But for instance, Ahmed drove higher mileage compared to Hazim, or لا سمح الله, the one person who bought the car had an accident and the other didn't, or the feature in one of them has different, or the engine size, or so on. But definitely when we come to 2001, the value of Ahmed's and Hazim's cars are different. The book value will tell you how much that car will worth, the Hazim's car, how much it will worth. From the original, they call it from the, or they find it from the original amount you have paid. Recovery period, the depreciable life for an asset, that's mean the number of years for depreciation. The salvage value, I think we all need or know the salvage value from earlier chapters. That is for the trade-off at the end of the asset useful life. Some people say, okay, what is the difference between the salvage and the book value? The salvage at the end of the asset's useful life. The book value at any certain time, it could be 1 month later, 1 year later, and so on. The appreciation rate, which is the DT, also can be found at any certain time, which is the fraction removed from the first cost. The fraction removed from the first cost. So if the original amount was 100,000, the second year, the book value is 90,000. That means that the appreciation rate is what? Is what? I'm not going to say it was 100,000, then it becomes to 90,000.
Doctor,
Yes.
it will come 10%.
Okay. Because it's the difference between the 100,000 and 10,000, and from there you can get exactly the rate. This is the terminologies or the variables. You need them. If you understood those variables, you can solve any depreciation comparing to what we are going to cover this semester or in this course. Because as I said, the depreciation method in the book and the extended slides, you see them has a different applications and different methods. But here we are just covering the straight line depreciation. In a meaning, the book value, which we just covered and informed here and said the definition, is decreased linearly, okay? Linearly decreased. How we calculate the depreciation at a certain time? You follow the formula B minus S over N. You can to recall it BSN, okay? B minus S over N. We know that B is the book value, the first cost, the S is the salvage, and N the number of years. The other needed is the book value at a certain time. The book value at a certain time equal the first cost, which is B. Pay attention to the first cost here. We always get the P, okay? The P, not the. Now in this chapter, we are using B. So pay attention to that difference so you don't get confused. So it is the first cost minus T times the depreciation at that exact number of years. So if I have or I need to find the book value at year 2, I have to find the depreciation first at year 2, then I can find the book value at year 2 and vice versa. Okay, let's take and see the example, and it's very simple. A gas processor has a first cost 20,000 with a salvage of 5,000. After 5 years, find or calculate the annual depreciation, and for B, the book value at year 3. C, plot the book value versus time. Let's do A, which is the depreciation, the annual depreciation. That means the depreciation will happen every year for that gas processor. The gas processor depreciation equal, if you want to go, equal the B minus S over N. And if you want to find it for the depreciation rate, not for a certain number of years, you just use B minus S multiplied with the D, which is the depreciation. But since we have or we need to find, and the depreciation is not given, we need to find it for every year, which is the B minus S. The first cost, the 20,000, minus the salvage is the 15,000, divided by the number of years, which is the 5. And that will lead us to 3,000 is the depreciation, yearly depreciation. Okay. Now, if I need to find the book value for year 3, I need to find, or I need to have the depreciation for year 3, and the depreciation is calculated equally for all the number of years to be 3,000. That's mean, and this is typical because now we have a linear relation. The book value to be found is you need to have the first cost, which is the 20,000, minus the number of year, which is 3, multiplied with the depreciation at year 3, which is the 3,000. And the book value will be 11,000. So what does that mean? The gas processor can be sold for 11,000. If you keep it for 5 years, then you can get rid of it for 5,000, because this will be the salvage value that time. And the depreciation for that gas processor with the linear relation depreciation we have is 3,000 per year. 3,000 every year is losing from its original amount. To draw a relation, this is a simple relation between time and the book value. The book value, we have it, is 11,000 on year 3, 5,000 on year 5, 20,000 on year 0. And the number of years can be demonstrated in the horizontal line. You are not going to be expected to do the plot, but this is just to explain the plot. Now we are not using why we used to have the minus sign previously, because we have an income and a cost, and we need to find the value of money and find whether that is profitable or it is a loss. The application of this chapter or this method, the depreciation, is not to show that there is an income coming out of this machine or this asset, is to find out when or how much is going to be worth that asset, considering the fact is it is depreciating in their original value from the beginning. So you are not having annual income here or annual profit or even the salvage here to find out the balance at the end to whether say this is a profitable or a loss. We used to do that to say and apply the chapter 5 concepts or chapter 6 to say whether if I'm going to do installments per year, is it economical for me to have this project or no? Or if I'm going to use my liquidity at time 0, is it economical for me or no? The first one was for chapter 6, which is the annual. The other one was for chapter 5. And then we had the capitalized cost and so on. So that is more to relate it to your business. That's why we use the minus and plus. Here we are using the cost and the vision to find the value of the asset, not the value of the money. You understood the difference between them? It's a good question though, Abdullah. So you got it? Okay. Any questions before we close? This is all about the depreciation. This is the level you need to understand about the inflation and the depreciation. There are extended slides and information about those two chapters in the textbook and the extended slides. You can read it for your own benefit and applications, but here this is where we can at least master the concept and understand the different and what is the depreciation means, and in a simple method like a straight line how we can calculate it. Also for the inflation, when economy goes down, how inflation can affect the present value or the value of the items or the value of money in terms of the inflation and the interest rate. So basically that's all for today. If you have any questions, please. Okay, I will answer all the other questions for the exam after we close the recording. Okay, we'll